Welcome back to the One Chart at a Time video series. I'm your host, John Schwabish. Okay, so we've just wrapped up the visualizations that can be used to compare different categories. We are now going to move into our second category of graph types, which are those that can be used to show changes over time. And perhaps the most familiar graph type in this particular category is the line chart. And of course, you don't even need a computer to make a line chart. You could literally just draw it with pen and paper, as you could do with the bar chart. And so to help us understand more about the line chart and how to make it come alive, I'm really happy to have my good friend Neil Richards, who is a Tableau Zen master and also the knowledge director at the Data Visualization Society, come on this program to help us understand more about the line chart.
Hey, John. So thank you very much for asking me to be part of this series. My name's Neil Richards, and I'm going to talk to you about line charts. So line charts are probably one of the most, not necessarily one of the most simple charts, but one of the most basic charts and the first charts that you will learn. And typically a line chart is just that, a line usually across the screen, which is going to be showing how a quantitative value, so a measure, will change over the course of time. It doesn't have to be time, but it's almost always time, a continuous measure of some sort. So usually you have your x-axis as a continuous quantity, such as time, and your y-axis will have your values placed and plotted on the y-axis, and then they will always be joined together to form a continuous line. Now, they'll usually be joined with straight lines, so you've got some kind of connection there. If they're close enough together, it'll give the appearance of a curve, but usually they'll be joined with straight lines. So you've got the points of interpolation as well, so you can assume that maybe your value is going up during those particular points of time or down. So let me show you a few examples to give an idea of what I mean. Share my screen here. And I hope you can see my first example of a line chart. This is a very simple example. This comes from Statista. I literally just looked at this today, and this is an example of the exchange rate of pound versus dollar over time. Now, this one you can see each of the individual points plotted. Each point has a dot, and you can see the line between each one, which is interpolating the particular value. Now, on the columns, so on the x-axis there, we have continual time, so going from January 15 all the way up to October 20. And on the y-axis, we have exchange rate. Now, one thing that's important to at least consider here is you don't have to go all the way down to zero. So on a bar chart, I'm sure many of you would agree it's important that you do always go down to zero. In this case, the exchange rate is never going to be zero. That's not a useful thing to be able to point. So just by cropping the range between 1.2 and 1.7 there, you're able to see more variation across time. Other considerations you might have are whether you're going to show your axes, whether you're going to show any annotations, or you're going to label any points. This graph chooses not to label points, but it does label the axes just like that. And this will be a sort of fairly standard bar chart that you might see. Here's another example, a little bit different, one of my own. So I had different considerations here. I was trying to consider perhaps reducing white space and giving a sort of more clean and clear kind of look. So my thoughts here were to remove things such as the grid lines, and also to remove the labels. So by removing labels, what I then decided to do was to annotate and then label some of the key points instead. So that's an alternative sort of consideration you have. I decided to look at most of the peaks there, to label them clearly, but then just to leave the rest of the line chart to kind of breathe by itself. And also, by not showing dots and circles, again, I think I've kept it a little bit cleaner. You don't always have to put the dots and circles to show each particular point that you're showing. So I've seen a few examples of line charts. Line charts can also be, they can show several things. So you might sort of be looking at one particular measure and you might want to break it down by another dimension. So it's quite possible to have a line chart which is in fact several lines on top of each other. And I want to show you my favorite line chart. And this is this one here. And this is by John Burn-Murdoch from Financial Times. And this was produced in about 2016. But instantly, when I wanted to think of my favorite line chart, I thought of this one, even though this is 4 years old. Loads of reasons why I like this. Yes, this is split by a lot of, or a dimension with a lot of numbers. We're essentially showing every Grand Slam tennis player ever. But what John has done is he's really made all of the lines really, really thin. So all we want to do is compare some key lines with all of the remainder, if you like. So he's done that by making them very thin, just to give you an idea of most people's profile. And then he's pulled out just 4 or 5 which really stand out for their exceptional profiles, their exceptional numbers. Another thing I love about this is that this is done in steps. Now, what John has thought is that there's not a gradual increase in numbers here. If you look at Serena Williams or any of the tennis players, there was not a gradual increase between 100 matches won and 101 matches won. You know, at no point was she halfway between that date and having won 100.5. It's right for these to step up like this because the moments, the interstitial moments in between do not make sense. And because of these steps, is probably the reason I remember this most. He called this a steppy graph. The steppy graph is 100% accurate. It's perfect description for this. And it's a brilliant pun as well. The Steffi graph, you can see here in the dark orange, is one of the all-time best female tennis players, well, male or female tennis players. So it really fits this. And it's another reason why I remember it. He's got great call-out text, both at the top there, and animations, similar to how I showed animations in mine. So in order to pick out these really interesting ones, he's put great labels and animations explaining the interesting shape around Navratilova and Graf, etc. And one last thing as well, he's made a really good choice on the x-axis. Sometimes you have to choose your y-axis. Am I going to go down to 0 or not? He's chosen, well, you're never going to see any Grand Slam tennis playing men or women winning matches between the age of 0 and 10, let's say. So he's just removed that from the axis and he's started, I'm not sure where that is, maybe about 14, 15, just to enable more information to be shown there. And every line, this isn't just one line chart, it's several hundred, but every line tells a great story there. Okay, so that's the end of my brief talk about line charts. I hope you found that interesting and entertaining. And thank you very much again, John.
And thanks to Neil for that great explanation of the line chart. Don't forget, I know we're talking about lots of different graph types, but we can always go back to our standard line chart, bar chart. These are the chart types that everybody knows how to read and everybody can understand. So while you might want to create different graph types to help engage your audience, remember that that line chart, everybody can read it. But as Neil mentioned, it's important to make sure that you're using good titles and annotation and text in and around the graph to help people understand your data and your story better. So come back tomorrow and we're going to talk about more charts, more graphs, and more diagrams that can be used to show changes over time.